Right, so the Labour Files, Al-Jazeera's brilliant series exposing the disgraceful actions of Keir Starmer's faction of the Labour Party, has been seen to widely exonerate the left of the party and has been a source of ire to a party leadership staunchly refusing to acknowledge anything covered in those programmes, some claiming them to be false allegations even, though oddly enough no legal action has ever been forthcoming. Funny that. At any rate, that excuse of theirs is going to be pretty hard to keep pulling off after Al Jazeera's latest episode. There's a new one, a surprise 15-minute-ish short featuring none other than Martin Forde KC himself, the author of the Forde Report. The episode called The Forde Response, Forde himself, who has not spoken out publicly since his report commissioned by Keir Starmer himself into Labour racism was published. And this was supposed to show that Labour's entire racism and anti-Semitism issue was down to the left and Jeremy Corbyn, those rotten lefties. But the report didn't do that, though. Although it found plenty of evidence of factionalism and racism in the party, much of it was aimed at the left, not necessarily committed by them. It's kind of telling, I thought, that of all the outlets Martin Forde could have gone to speak out on any displeasure he's had with the Labour reaction to his report, the actions taken or lack thereof since it was published, his first time going public to do so, and he chose Al Jazeera to speak to, who have far and away produced the most compelling, no-holds-barred exposés of what is going on in the Labour Party under Keir Starmer's tenure as leader now, and should make anyone sneering at this outlet look up and take notice of that. In fact, Martin Forde was highly complimentary of the series. If you've not seen the other episodes, they're all on the Al Jazeera English YouTube channel, in that Forde found them extremely interesting and felt Al Jazeera was given access to even more information than he was. His first statement in this episode is nevertheless a damning one, though. He said, anti-black racism and Islamophobia is not taken as seriously as anti-Semitism is in the Labour Party. Forde himself is a black man. He's hardly going to be inclined to skip over that point. But it seems obvious to me, and I would hope any sensible thinking individual, that all forms of racism should be treated as equally repulsive. And anyone or anything not doing that is inherently racist as a result of that, and clearly has a reason to treat some forms of racism more seriously than others. Now, I've used this image in several videos of mine by now, and it blatantly proves Forde's point, because anti-Semitism here has a bespoke complaints page on the Labour Party website, but every other form of racism there is goes into a pile of general complaints. We needn't ask why anti-Semitism gets priorityed anymore. We have seen the issue get used as a club to beat the left with for years now. And when that has been to the detriment of other racism complaints and incidences, that is in and of itself racist as well. How can it not be? Starmer ordered this investigation and report into Labour's racism issues shortly after becoming leader. The leak of the infamous Labour Leaks report exposing appalling bullying, racism and mistreatment amongst staff, particularly via WhatsApp at Labour HQ, forced the issue to be confronted, and it was Martin Forde who was commissioned by Starmer to carry out this investigation and report back. Starmer made a commitment to BAME staff of the party at that time that this would not be a whitewash. He's a lawyer. He's been director of public prosecutions. God knows he's told us that enough. So, in his words, he knows what a proper independent investigation looks like. And he said at the time all of this to staff. He gave them his word, worth less than the monetary value of a coupon on the back of a bag of crisps, as we well know by now. But this is what people were told at the time. He said he knew what he was looking for. Sure, I bet we know what you were looking for. Anyway, the WhatsApp messages, a great many of which were aimed at Diane Abbott, of course, always treated as the average racist go-to target, it seems, led Forde to conclude this was a sign of a broader problem in the party. And indeed, submissions from ordinary members backed that opinion up. A broader feeling that the party needed to improve its approach to racial discrimination. A significant number of BAME Labour councillors felt they were subjected to suspiciously timed disciplinary action in order to prevent them from standing, for example. In fact, this reminded me of a story from June of 2020 where Starmer appointed a panel to conduct a diversity review in the party, and every single member of the panel was white. And actually, the review itself concluded that Starmer himself had the least diverse office staff for a leader of the opposition in a decade, infuriating the party's BAME representatives no end, and certainly gives you the impression Starmer may be part of the problem himself. At any rate, after a stupid number of delays, which, having got a flavour for Starmer's way of running things by this time, authoritarian control freakery, it made a lot of people think he was trying to get bits of the Forde Report changed. Now, Martin Forde didn't touch on any of that. But it finally got published in July of last year to very little fanfare from the mainstream media, despite Forde having made 165 recommendations for improvement in the Labour Party. 165? What a mess, surely. So what have the party said to him since about all of that then? What have they told him they're going to do to fix these issues? Nothing. No contact with Starmer since. Some cursory admin contact from General Secretary David Evans, but the only people that have spoken to him in any meaningful way regarding this report is a group of black Labour MPs. He's been conveniently forgotten and his report largely hidden under the doormat rather than actioned upon as it absolutely should have been, as Starmer promised it would be. According to Forde, he was approached by just one media outlet on the day of publication for comment, but after admitting they hadn't read it, and Forde suggesting they do so, they never got back to him. There was no interest in this report at all by this point. Corbyn was gone. That was the goal, and the goal was achieved. Of course, the largest part of the allegations concerning Corbyn's tenure as Labour leader was the issue of anti-Semitism. There's never been any denial it exists in the party, as it exists in all public bodies. But Martin Forde highlighted that the anti-Semitism training brought in since Starmer's takeover was, as he put it, didactic, top-down and one-dimensional. Since Starmer turned it all over to his factional Jewish affiliates, the Jewish Labour movement, and kept out those Jewish members who were pro-Corbyn and not accusing him of being a raging anti-Semite and the like. Forde wanted this addressed so that the anti-Semitism training available truly was representative of all Jewish communities and not drawn down factional lines. Labour is a broad church, as they keep saying. Well, those pews have been getting narrower and narrower for years now. I don't recognise it as a party I once belonged to, that's for sure. The Forde Report was, to my mind, something Starmer hoped would put the boot into Corbyn, reinforce the false mainstream media narratives accusing a lifelong anti-racist of being a racist. That contributed in part to Labour losing the 2019 general election and inflicting Boris Johnson on the country. It didn't do that. As such, it's been dropped by the current Labour leadership, uninterested as they evidently seem to be in actually dealing with the very real racism they themselves highlighted for their own ends, along with all the other racism, which is equally real, that they continue to ignore, now an issue that won't go away. Labour claims to be anti-racist. It claims that Black Lives Matter, but clearly they don't. By saddling Corbyn with the anti-Semitism fallout, Starmer hoped he could just move on and detach himself from that. Instead, we're seeing that exposed more and more by non-mainstream news sources. The mainstream media have dropped the entire issue now, of course, as if it's all fixed and all gone away. More independent outlets who won't let this travesty go keep returning to it, though, and won't allow the issue of anti-black racism or Islamophobia, and indeed anti-Semitism, as we've seen a lot of that play out throughout Starmer's purging of left members, won't allow it to be put back in a box and forgotten about now that it's no longer useful for blatantly political ends, because that isn't tackling racism whatsoever. And look, you can point at independent media mouthpieces like me or others and call us woke lefties or whatever. The thing you can't escape now is the fact that the very author of this long-awaited investigation is singing from the same hymn sheet many of us have been and still are. Wriggle out of that one. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do hit like and subscribe, leave a comment and hit the notification bell too so you don't miss the next one. Also look out for me on social media and other interesting stuff by clicking on that Linktree link in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Cheers, folks.